Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of our Triton Leaders Conference, Allyship. For those able to attend yesterday, we hope the conference thus far has been enriching and stimulating experience. Our program continues today, starting with the keynote address from alumna Dr. Helen V. Griffith, the inaugural executive director of the Preuss School at UC San Diego. Prior to her role at the Preuss School, Dr. Griffith was the founding executive director and CEO of E3 Civic High, an innovative public charter high school located in the San Diego Central Public Library. Throughout her career, Dr. Griffith has had over 20 years of experience as an educator and principal specializing in leadership development, school transformation, and educational entrepreneurship. Please welcome Dr. Helen Griffith.
Thank you, Michael, for that warm introduction. Good morning. It's a pleasure to share with each of you at today's 2022 Triton Leaders Conference. I'm zooming in all the way from Chula Vista, California, and I'm honored to come together to address a transformational topic, allyship, achieving inclusive excellence. And what about that phenomenal artwork depicting kindness, justice, and inclusion as we embrace diversity? Shout out to the Kilby 4th grade class in Florence, Alabama, for their creative imagery of us coming together in harmony and love. And if the theme wasn't filled with enough positive power, then here comes that tagline: change is in our DNA. I just love that. Just let that marinate for a minute. Change is in our DNA. That means we, you, me, us, Triton leaders, were created for such a work at this. We're created to adapt, to change, to develop, to alter, to rotate, to move, to shift, to grow, transform, and forever remain in the cycle of continuous improvement. Change is who we are. It's what we do. Change is why we exist. Change is our constitution. That said, our theme, allyship, achieving inclusive excellence, cannot be actualized unless it's grounded in change. You should know I'm a teacher at heart. You heard a little bit about my background. And I have a personal love affair with the alphabet and its ability to be used as a mnemonic device. You know it, a mnemonic device is a memory technique that can help us increase our ability to recall and retain information. I can still remember back in the day, sitting in Geisel Library, creating a series of mnemonic devices on stacks and stacks of 3x5 cards for OChem, biology, anatomy, and physiology, and the list goes on. Now, while I use those 3x5 cards back in my undergraduate studies today, they still work. It helps me move information from my short-term memory to my long-term memory. And so I thought, since today we're addressing such a transformative theme, I brought along my love affair for the alphabet and created a mnemonic pathway to allyship. So for these next minutes together, let's go back to school in order to learn the journey of becoming a member of the band known as allyship. Every good teacher starts a lesson with the definition to create that common language. So what is allyship? Well, I'm glad you asked. Allyship is defined as an active, consistent, and arduous practice of unlearning and reevaluating. Allyship defines a person who holds systemic power in their quest to end oppressions. They, the allies, show up in solidarity with a group of people who are systemically disempowered. So Triton leaders, how do we do this? Where do we start? Well, let's start with the letter A, active. This process of becoming an ally is a living, moving, dynamic organism that can never sleep nor slumber. It must stay alert, be attentive, flexible, tenacious, and always developing strong muscles. The A in allyship means we must engage in the work at hand, not sitting on the sidelines, but becoming an upstander, not a bystander. I sit here today representing two groups. I'm a woman and I'm an African American. both of which remain in the struggle for full equality, equity, access, justice, choice, power, and every human courtesy afforded to my white brothers. My only true choice is to fully participate in the process of positive transformation. I must actively interrupt stuff. There is no neutral where oppression and discrimination exist, and I'm calling on all allies to suit up, for we ride at dawn. Yes, L, learn and unlearn. First, learn about you. That's the big work. As uncomfortable as it may be, learn about your barriers to allyship, your conscious bias, your unconscious bias, your bents, your comfort levels around those who don't look like you, think like you, talk like you, and might I add, vote like you. Consistently check your thoughts, examine your motives, take a deep dive to evaluate your values, expose the cultural myths and rumors that run around in your mind, analyze your ideologies, your tendencies, and then measure them up to that conference artwork from the Kilby fourth graders. Ask yourself, am I kind? Am I just? Am I inclusive? What and who do I embrace? And once you learn where you measure up, then unlearn where you need to measure down. Allyship should be understood as an ongoing process based upon learning and unlearning, action and accountability. L, lead from the side. Respect the history of the resistance movements you're about to step into. Don't act like the party started once you arrive. Just get in where you fit in. So imagine with me the historic event of March 1965. Close your eyes for a moment and just think about it. I can see you. Close your eyes. Think about our legendary American heroes that marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Those allies constituted the true Rainbow Coalition with every creed and race, every walk of life, every identity representing as one. They jumped into the movement to lock arms in solidarity, creating a wall of protest for justice, equity, equality, and full inclusion into the human race. Those images remind us to lead from the side, not ahead and not behind, but together at every step with those who are still being marginalized and disempowered today. You see, Triton leaders, when we lead from the side, our allyship allows the oppressed to receive the strength necessary to stay in the fight for equal power, prominence, provision, and the ability to actualize their purpose and passion. Something powerful happens when we lock arms together, leading side by side. Why? Yielding to change. Remember today's tagline: DNA is in our change. Change is in our DNA. DNA is our change. Please allow me to make a connection here with material science and engineering. After all, we are a science school. You see, in material science and engineering, the yield point is the point on a stress-strain curve that indicates the limit of elastic behavior and the beginning of plastic behavior. Below the yield point, a material will deform elastically and will return to its original shape when the applied stress is removed. Therefore, Triton leaders, once you've applied the discomfort that allowed you to learn where you need to grow, continue to apply that same pressure in order to remain pliable in your thinking, pliable with your actions, and those behaviors that will disrupt the systems in place to oppress. Stay in the yield point. Stay in the yield zone. Don't revert to former behaviors that may have contributed to the continuation of systemic oppression. You see, it as a yielding person who can change the way they normally behave in order to tear down the evils of racism, sexism, classism, and every other ism in order to build a world of unconditional love and celebration for all. This is inclusive excellence. S, solidarity, unity, oneness. Be there. When? At all times. When it's popular, when it's not. When it's safe, when it's dangerous. When you get no recognition, and when you do. Solidarity means you're with me. You're my ride or die. It's a vow that you cannot take back, even when I'm angry, when I'm misunderstood, when I've been hurt, when I'm crying, and when you don't understand. Solidarity in allyship takes no breaks. It stays on the side of right, not who's right, but what's right. I can recall a painful journey in my early years. I grew up in Southeast San Diego, predominantly a community of color, and attended schools where the staff and my peers looked like me. Well, in high school, I was bussed out of my community to attend Patrick Henry High in search of the best academic preparation. Well, it was there that I was greeted with the ugly head of racism as a student shouted at me, "Nigger, go home." It was there that I needed someone to stand next to me in solidarity. I needed an upstander to speak up for me and say, "How dare you call her that?" I needed someone to perhaps walk with me to the office to report the incident and shed light on the bigger issue at that school. I needed someone to say, "Hey, are you okay?" It was due to that incident and so many more that I vowed to create schools and disrupt educational systems that would never allow a child to feel the pain that I did. Scholars should be at schools everywhere where they feel welcomed, valued, respected, and loved regardless of their race, their creed, their religion, their gender expression, their identity, their economic status, or the color of their skin. Allyship takes action to be there, to be the voice, to be the change. Allyship practices the type of solidarity that lifts others as we climb. H, harm not. We have a new phrase in education that's been introduced lately, partly due to COVID, and it's become the driving force to guide our work. And it states 3 important words: do no harm. It's a new mindset, believe it or not, and it's a shift. The concept of do no harm in education is pressing those of us in the field to shift and disrupt every system that has or will cause harm to all scholars who are underserved, disenfranchised, disempowered, underrepresented, and oppressed. We must hold administrators accountable to do no harm by hiring the right staff and then training them in the right way, creating equitable schools where all learners, especially those of color, feel welcomed, celebrated, valued, respected, and unconditionally loved. Do no harm by hiring a diverse staff who reflect the children that we teach. According to research from Johns Hopkins University and American University, studies actually showed that students do indeed benefit from teachers who look like them. Black students in particular, who had even one Black teacher by 3rd grade, are 13% more likely to enroll in college. Hold educators accountable and doing no harm when implementing discipline policies that disproportionately suspend and expel Black males more than any other group. Do no harm and hold our institutions accountable by creating systems of restorative justice. Do no harm and develop grading policies and culturally competent curriculum that allows all learners to demonstrate content mastery in a variety of modalities. Do no harm by dispelling negative expectations for scholars of color. Do no harm and love all children. Allyship, it means being an advocate, speaking up, speaking out, holding educators accountable, and disrupting every school system where harm is still actively at work. I identify often and always with the goal of understanding. Allyship means to seek to understand and not to be understood. You can't walk a mile in their shoes, but you can walk a mile next to their shoes. sharing the feelings of those who have been marginalized, learn the story, sharing the pain of the disenfranchised. My family happens to be from the deep South of Mississippi, where I grew up hearing stories of my grandmother, born at the turn of the 19th century, whose parents, born in the 18th century, were not permitted to read and write, as it was illegal in the state of Mississippi for Negroes to receive an education. I saw my grandmother's pain, even in her late years, when she shared the memory of her 9-year-old brother who was carried away by the night riders and they never saw him again. I wept at the fact that my great-grandmother, a Black woman, and my great-grandfather, a white man, made the mistake of falling in love, had a child, but could never marry because it was against the law for biracial couples to spend the rest of their lives together in harmony and peace. Hearing that my mother in the 30s attended substandard, dilapidated, segregated schools with tattered books passed down from the white schools and not allowed to attend college, but for the historically Black colleges and universities. Shout out to the HBCUs of which she's a graduate. Allyship shares in the continued struggle for those still not at the table of full inclusion. Allyship shares to the point that our heart breaks over every unjust act, and staying silent is no longer an option. And finally, P, privilege. I'm sure you imagine that one. Put your privilege to good use. Allyship refers to a situation or time when a person in a position of privilege supports, shows up for, amplifies the voices of, and otherwise works in solidarity with marginalized and oppressed persons or groups. And since everyone holds systemic power in some areas and lacks it in others, everyone has an area which they can practice allyship. In order to practice that allyship, individuals need to acknowledge their privilege and recognize that they are not the experts. That said, effective allyship means listening to and taking direction from those with lived experience of marginalization and oppression. It requires resistance and organizing, putting in the work, including educating oneself about systems of oppression and accepting criticism and being accountable for mistakes. Triton leaders, I therefore charge you to take action with the words formed in this mnemonic device for allyship. Be active, learn, unlearn, lead from the side, yield to change, give way to pressure, let solidarity hold you hostage, do no harm. Identify to the point where you create empathy that will not let you rest until the disempowered are elevated to the equal place that they rightly deserve. I believe together we can create a world of inclusive excellence. And in the words of the Mandalorian, this is the way. Thank you for having me. Let's go change the world.
Thank you, Dr. Griffith. Now, I'd like to introduce Demetrius Bedgood, class of 2014.
Thank you. Good morning, Tritons. My name is Demetrius Bedgood. I am a UC San Diego alum, Thurgood Marshall College, 2014. And I'm going to be sharing with you some poetry from my recently published book, some spinning animation. Now, I've actually published, 5 other books before this one, but this one is definitely the one that really holds a special place in my heart and the one that I feel like stands out amongst all the others. And before I get into my poetry reading, I'm going to be sharing 5 poems. I want to give a little background on how this book was created. Well, during the lockdown of 2020, with COVID, everything happening in the world, I was teaching from home. I am a kindergarten and first grade teacher at a charter school here in San Diego called the McGill School of Success. I had a lot of time on my hands, and being the writer that I am, I decided to use that time not only to teach, but also to write and be creative. So I got in touch with some friends of mine, and they helped me to create the art I needed to back up my poems. I'm going to be sharing 5 of what I feel like are the strongest poems with you right now, and I hope you guys enjoy. This one right here is called 2020. 2020. Everything was going well. That's what it seemed. That is, until the world got ravaged by COVID-19. Now it seems every day there's another round of infections. Social distancing just to keep myself from becoming infected. As for this nation, it's headed towards another recession. A deep depression is surrounding most of our citizens. The thought of going broke is much too strenuous. Can't sit around waiting for another small stimulus check. Can't sit around waiting on the officials we elect. It's all 6s and 7s. We're living in a state of disarray. 2020 will most likely go down in history as a year of infamy. That one right there is called 2020. I just took what I, was experiencing, what everybody was experiencing during 2020 and summed it up in like a little 16, 18 line poem. And that's the backbone of suspended animation. Now, before I go on to my second poem, I'm gonna tell you about how this title came about. Suspended animation came from an idea I was talking to a friend about how we are living as people. We are technically alive, but we are not really going anywhere. We are suspended in animation. We are, going about our lives, but we're not able to really do anything due to everything that's going on in the world. Again, due to COVID-19. And when I heard the title, Suspended Animation, I thought, man, this would be a great title, Suspended Animation. And I thought about a ton of concepts that could go along with it, which leads me to my next poem. This one was actually the first poem that I wrote for this book. It's called Dollar, and I hope you enjoy it. Can you spare $1, please? I lost my job last week. I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to sleep. Barely any money for food. No clean water to drink. No clothes on my back. No shoes on my feet. Many tears fill my eyes each time that I blink. I haven't given up hope, but my grief runs deep. It's really hard to think when there's nothing to eat. I'm living on the streets, hadn't showered in a week, can't even brush my teeth. My situation is looking kind of bleak. My mind is feeling kind of weak. Can you spare $1, please? It may not seem like very much, but it means the world to me. Now, this one in particular comes from personal experience to some extent. At one point, I was actually sleeping in my car, and when I was an undergrad at UC San Diego, I didn't really have anywhere to go, until I went to go back home to live with my father. My parents are undergoing a divorce, but I remember having nowhere to go, and I remember, just being at my lowest point, and given the situation that the world's going through because of COVID, many people, unfortunately, are experiencing this sad reality. And so I took that and I wanted to, create something that I knew that a lot of people, unfortunately, can relate to, but I just wanted to write about the truth of what's going on in the world and put it in a way that many people can understand and bring awareness to what's really going on in the world in a creative way, that way more people can be able to really dig deep into the situations that COVID has caused for a lot of people, because this is reality. And so, but on a happier note, I do want to give a shout out to the teachers, because I myself am a teacher and I really wanted to give them their props. And I wanted to, really uplift them, especially because they are some of our true heroes in this world. And I want to, really uplift them with this poem. It's called Superstars. Dedicated to the teachers, past, present, and future. Thank you for being the superstars that you are, planting seeds of knowledge that'll bear much fruit, the inspiration for the dreams that we grow up and pursue. It takes an incredibly special person to take on this occupation, one who's dedicated to education, shaping the future for for generations. Thanking every single teacher. Thank you for all that you do. Now, this poem, really means a lot to me. When I wrote it, I was actually working out at the gym and it just hit me. So I stopped working out and I immediately grabbed my pen and paper and I started jotting down ideas. And when I read it to some of my colleagues, they loved it and they told me that, I should definitely include this poem in my collection. Even though it didn't really fit the concept of suspended animation, I felt like I needed to bring some positivity and some light to the overall grim situation of COVID and the overall themes that I've decided to write about. And that is definitely a standout. And with this next poem is called WIP. WIP, it stands for work in progress. I feel like, as human beings, we're all constantly working towards, being better versions of ourselves. And COVID, like I said before, gave me a lot to think about and it helped me to evolve as a person. I took the negativity that surrounded COVID, which we're still going through, and I turned it into something positive. And I just wanted to share this one with you because it is one of the best poems I believe I've ever written. This is called Work in Progress, WIP. Please forgive me for not smiling. I'm not depressed, far from introverted. Family is golden. Friendships are cherished. Solitude's my refuge. Seclusion spurs evolution. Thoughts are collected. Listening to music. Exercising my mind. Lifting heavy weights. Exercising my body. Listening the Bible. Exercising my spirit. Please excuse me. Perpetually progressing. Now, let me touch on one word in here, listening. Listening was actually a word that I'd found in a Greek dictionary, which means, constant, constant. And when I put listening with reading the Bible, I mean constantly, having faith, constantly, keeping up. So listening basically means constant, and keeping faith. And so I really like that word. And as a former English and literature major, also, dabbling in communication, I felt like as a poet and as an artist, I should definitely try to, challenge myself into finding new words and bringing them to the light so other people can learn from my works and also expand on their vocab. So, that poem really meant a lot to me. My brother helped me with structuring it, and it came out better than I could have imagined. And now for my final poem. This one's called Unity. Unity was based on the idea of all of us coming together as a family, as a nation, globally to help fight the threat that is COVID. And I feel that this one's important because we need to work as a team if we ever hope to get through this nightmare that COVID has caused the world. And so with that, we go ahead and get started. Unity. United brothers and sisters, we're connected. In need. Together we stand tall. Connected we remain strong, keeping our spirits high, our feet firmly grounded, conditioned for any challenge. Collectively we move mountains. Divided we become history. Connected we achieve victory. And that is unity. I feel like that is one of the strongest poems I've ever written. And I was, very, very privileged to include it on this collection, Suspended Animation, which is available on Amazon. None of this would have ever came about had it not been for the writing classes I took at UC San Diego. I took a poetry class. And, work on my vocab and work on my writing skills and to really take time together, to piece a, wonderful classic collection of work, because I was writing my first 5 books like maybe within a year of each other, but he inspired me to really take my time and really create something that I could consider a classic or my magnum opus. This one is definitely my greatest work thus far. I'm really proud of it, and I'm really thankful for my alma mater, UC San Diego, for allowing me this time to share with you today. I really appreciate, everyone here. Thank you for spending your morning with me and listening. Suspended Animation is available on Amazon, and I'm very proud of this work. Very proud. It came out on October 3rd. And it took me a year and a half to get this done, but it was well worth it. And I want to say, thank you again, UC San Diego. And thank you to, everyone who's appeared today. It has been a pleasure being here. And I just want to leave you with these parting words. Never give up. Always shoot for your dream. Always reach for the stars. And never be afraid to dream big. This is Demetrius Baggood, and I want to say, thank you for this morning, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you.